Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of Finweek Money Matters. This is the show that helps you manage your finances. I'm Tumisho Greater. Coming up on the show today, we take a look at the Stokvel Industry and what's happening with plans for new low-cost airlines and whether it may be time to invest in Lonmin. And then later on, we'll have in studio some experts to tell us all about value investing. But before we get into all of that, do remember that you can send us your comments or any feedback to @moneymattersabn360.com. But next up, let's take a look at that trend for the week. Our Stokvels are no longer just for gogos putting away 150 Rand a month with their friends to provide a safety net for emergencies. No, it is a 25 billion Rand industry with people from all walks of life using Stokvels as a savings tool and even for investment clubs. In studio with me is Finweek Journalist, that's Buhle Ndweni. Buhle, thanks for your time. Firstly, 25 billion Rand. This is the Stokvel industry. A lot of banks are saying they're not able to capture all this market. But first, let's talk about what are Stokvels doing right that banks aren't able to do?
Yeah, I think it's because they have a lot of trust within the members. So they're able to put together that money and take their standard of banking a bit higher. And it's especially people within poor communities that maybe usually are not able to get loans. So if they're actually there together, trusting one another, putting money together, they're able to save it towards whatever purpose, common purpose that they have at the end of the day. So trust issue, that's what they're getting right. And the banks are trying to look at this in a different way in terms of they're trying to offer them lower banking rates. They're also trying to give them better interest rates as well. Like for instance, a bank would say, if you're going to have 1,000 rands in the bank account, then we're going to give you better rates in which you can earn more money on top of the money that you have. Yeah.
So apart from the low interest rates that there, what are some of the initiatives that we are seeing banks coming up with? Reading the article, Nedbank came to mind, and are they the ones that are making significant inroads in trying to get a piece of this pie?
Yeah, because it's so difficult to get loans from banks, especially if you're in poor communities. What they're trying to do now is going to rural areas and then seeing what they can do in order to uplift people. There's a high rate of unemployment. So what they say is, okay, let us look at your bank record in terms of keeping up the money or your Stokvel money in our banks. And then maybe let's give you some microfinancing in which you can actually open your own business and employ other people. So that's been happening for the past 10 years actually, since 2005. And it's a model that they say is working quite well after the Grameen Bank model. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. It seems as though they are doing something. What really struck me was the Stokvel app. Now, there's an app for just about everything. I think 2 weeks ago we were talking about a Lobola app, but that's a whole other story. The Stokvel app, what is this?
It's an app where, well, there's two different kinds. There's one called Stokkie, and that is basically to build trust. Because, you know, with people, that's the reason why they don't go to banks in the first place. Because it's about trust. You know, what I'm going to give you my money, and then what are you going to do with it? So what this Stokkie app does is that you have the treasurer that then goes to the website, the stokkie.co.za website, and then they go and register. After that, they then invite other members. So if you're a member of a Stokvel, you're able to track the movement. You're able to track, okay, Dumisho put in money today, Buhle withdrew money, and so forth. Yeah.
Okay, so in this particular app, people are able to take money in and out of that particular pool?
No, they're able to monitor what's happening in the bank account.
I see.
So you're able to trust. Yeah, there's a lot of transparency happening there. And so I think it might take up, I mean, it's relatively new, so we don't know how it's going to actually work. But another functionality that they have is communication, in terms of communicating with other members in order to arrange meetings and so forth, and kind of build a community around Stokvels and make it a viable techno-savvy thing, you know.
Whenever I think about Stokvels, we think about it as being a South African thing, especially the name, and you do think about, you know, your gogo or your mother are putting away money, but it's an African phenomenon. I mean, this is not something that's unique to South Africans.
Yeah. When I spoke to African Response that did the latest survey, They actually said they spoke to people who are living in South Africa but are from like your countries like Nigeria, Malawi and so forth. What came forth for me was the Nigerian people. The fact that they actually use Stokvel for enterprise development.
Okay.
You know, they give you money or loan you money, but you also have got to come up with a business plan, and you need to account for each and every cent that they give to you. And if you're not, you're penalized severely and you have to pay it plus interest.
You've always heard about they're using this for enterprise development, but there are different types of things that you can save for. So they, you know, in tough times, for when you have a funeral, something like a burial society comes together. Is that the same thing as a Stokvel?
I think that model would be different, but you do get burial societies in which it serves as insurance. If maybe a member dies, usually if you go to the banks, they will say, well, give us a death certificate. But in this case, you really don't need one. They know you, they trust you. You come to them and you say, I have a funeral, and they give you the money. So you also have got grocery Stokvels, whereby in this economic you know, a stage that we're at, you know, things are not maybe working well. People realize they need to save. So beginning of the year, January until December, they put up money either at some store or something, and then end of the year, they now have this surplus, and then they can go and buy in bulk, and then it can push them over, or tide them over for the next period.
Buhle, thank you so much. It's good to see that there are all these new developments that are happening there. It's becoming more hip. You're seeing younger people getting involved, and also it's being used for enterprise development. Thank you so much to our Finweek journalist, that is Buhle Ndweni. Now, time now for us to take a look at the cover story with Finweek's editor, Jana Marais. Jana is now joining us from our Cape Town studios today to discuss this week's edition of, and is Jana Marais. Jana, you've decided to look at low-cost airlines in this week's cover. Why is that?
Hi, Tamisha. Yes, there's been quite a bit happening in the airline space. I think since 2012, when we saw One Time and Velvet Sky collapse, we've had about at least 5 airlines, you know, announcing their intent to start services locally. So far, 2 of them have actually started regional services, but we haven't actually seen massive competition on routes like Joburg, Cape Town, and you know, Joburg, Durban, and so on. So I think it's a tough space to do business in. Perhaps the lower oil price will make life a bit easier for these guys. But you know, there's strict rules around ownership regulation if you want to fly locally. So I think a lot of them are struggling to get their shareholder bases right, so they can actually get licenses to fly here. And I think from, you know, just from an investor perspective, it's a tough industry to invest in and make money in. You know, the ones who will work will probably be the ones with shareholders with really big pockets.
Jana, Comair, that's been you know, one particular airline that's managed to get things right, but there's been talk that, you know, labor disputes, labor situations there may derail them. Do you have an update on that at all?
Yes, I think we'll have, you know, we'll have to keep an eye on that. I know Solidarity is very keen to take their, you know, they talk a tough talk, but generally Solidarity is not a union that easily goes on strike. So I suspect we might see a settlement there without any flights being grounded. Yeah, and Comair, I mean, that's one of the few success stories in this industry. I think they've been around since the 1940s, you know, the original business that started, and they've got an amazing profit track record, but also they've got shareholders where if things go tough, you know, get tough, they can actually get financing relatively easier than we saw with a company like One Time, which really struggled. So yeah, I think you know, and I think Warren Buffett put it best as to why he doesn't invest in airlines anymore. And you know, it's a huge fixed cost base. There's tough competition, and if you have competition like the SAA or Mango, and they will hate me for saying this, but where frankly your shareholder has pockets as deep, you know, there's no end to it, it's tough to compete if you actually have to earn a return on investment.
Jana, thank you so much for that. That's our Finweek editor talking to us about the cover story of the week. She mentioned Warren Buffett there. We'll be touching on that just a little bit later. Time now for us to take a look at the punt of the week. Lonmin, they've had a rough few years with a deadly Marikana strike in 2012. This was followed by another 5-month stoppage last year. The platinum price also still a long way off its peak of around $1,520 US last year. But joining me in studio for more on this is a Finweek contributor, that's Moxima Gama. Moxima, thanks so much for joining us. Lonmin, Looking at just the headlines today, they are slashing their capital expenditure by about 65 million US dollar odd, and this seems to be in line with what other resource companies are doing. Has the dust settled? Are things starting to look better for Lonmin?
Look, I mean, writing on Lonmin was a bit of a gamble, and it's a bit risky getting into it now. But if you're the type of investor that likes catching stocks at the bottom of the price, then Lonmin would be one of them. But you just need to be aware that there's going to be a bit of consolidation, at least between that 27 and 35 rand range band. So you wouldn't want to really get into that because there'll be a lot of volatility coming in. But of course, above 35, then you'll see some momentum picking up. The dust has settled. I mean, this is one of the companies that have really gone through the dead drums and been dragged in the dirt. And they are trying to redeem themselves, or rather replenish the company, and getting them at a low price. It's pretty much like a telecom story. You could be getting it at a at very good levels above 37. 35 rather.
I just want to point out to that screen that's on the chart now. I know you always do this technical analysis. There are lines going all over the place there. So at what point would you say Lonmin may now start becoming a buying opportunity then?
Okay, so at this point in time, you need to be aware that it's still trading within its bear trend. So you'd be getting in, that's why I said you're taking a bit of a risk, but you'd be getting it at the bottom. You'd be getting in at least 35 Rand to get that momentum towards 42, which is not a bad, it's a 20%. It's not a bad rise. But of course, if it then breaches that bold black line, which would be the major trend line, and trades above that 48 level, that would just take it out of its long-term bearishness and put it into positive territory. And that's effectively the price that you would at least could secure you further upside. Getting at 35 could be a bit risky, but you'd be getting it from the bottom. So and it's in line with what at least I see for platinum, which also
what about platinum? I mean, the commodity outlook that we've been hearing about doesn't look good. Oil being one of them. Gold was the one that seemed to be the bright spot, but it's still coming under pressure now. Copper, iron ore. Platinum outlook for that particular commodity?
It's the same. What's good at this point is it's dipped so much that it's also quite cheap. There's a bit of consolidation that's happening. So you're going to see from dips, there's always this kind of sideways movement that pans out before you see an ascending phase or upside momentum. So platinum's doing quite the same. At least if it trades above $1,300, will we see it pick up momentum? But if it's still trading below that, it's still within the consolidation phase. But look, platinum has got a long-term fundamental bias, because it's I don't know, its properties or just the metal itself is used quite a lot in the automotive industry. And at this point there are these what they call the cell fuel cars that are coming in, which are electronic, and now you're finding a lot of these factories trying to then produce these cars because government can give you tax on that or a tax break on that. And platinum in specific is a catalyst that's used to then create this electricity that is going up, and so there is that long-term trend. What's happened?
What about substitutes, though?
Look, the substitutes with the type of fuel they're making, it's a fuel electronic type of fuel. They need certain properties of platinum, so they could be substitutes, but what creates that would be the platinum commodity itself. So there is a lot of upside momentum that could go, and that's why I said sometimes dips like that are usually good when they get out of a consolidation phase, because despite it dipping, it is still much on a long-term bull trend. It would have just been a correction within the bull trend. So such stocks, specifically the resources, it's good to kind of pick them up at low prices instead of picking them up when they've surged or when people are starting to sell, when they're exhausted. So it is a bit of a gamble with Lonmin, but if you really want to, I've got my eyes waiting for that 35 level to breach.
Well, we're going to be watching this one, Moxima, waiting to see if that correction does happen for that bull trend. That was Moxima Gama, our Finweek contributor. And up next, we'll be uncovering this week's cover story.